Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Fire Away. My name is Robert and this week I am joined by the man who went to hell and his name is Martin Dzuris. Yay, Martin is in the house. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to be together. And this time not a testimony time, but we're gonna dive deep. And this week the topic is dealing with the hardships in life.
It's a hard topic.
Exactly, not an easy one, but
No.
we have a seasoned husband, grandpa.
Father, grandpa, yeah.
That's what I mean. Son as well.
Brother.
Brother, thank God for all these wonderful things. But yeah, you're in the house. Great to have you once again. I'm always fun. I'm always. I want to say overjoyed, but that might seem a bit too much. Overjoyed. Yeah. What would be a better word for overjoyed? Just happy.
Just happy.
Simply happy.
Yes, simply happy.
Okay, so like I said, I want to talk about the topic dealing with hardships. As most people, if you've not watched the testimony, I highly recommend it to go watch it. But you've been through a lot.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, you dealt with some serious hardships.
Yes, I have.
And there's even more hardships. There were even more hardships in your life than you mentioned in the testimony.
Yes.
But if we shortly go over them, that the ones that you have mentioned.
So escaping as a child,
Yeah.
I mean, being uprooted from, your home country, your hometown, from your family,
Yeah.
your little friends. Okay, so I was 4.5, but, you still have some. But,
You bond, right? You bond. Like even if you are 4.5, you have bonded to the people around you. So
yeah. And, the environment and everything and language, then suddenly you're taken to Austria, you spend a few months in Austria, German, different culture, German language.
yeah.
And then you go to the US, totally different, now another, culture, another language.
The fourth culture by now.
Yeah, so it's... But that wasn't as bad. I mean, kids are pretty resilient,
Yeah.
and it does depend on the parents how they handle it. So because then the kids adjust. If the parents don't make a big deal out of it, and kids are highly adaptable.
Yeah.
But it constantly moving, then we lived in LA, and then we went to Chicago, and then we went to Seattle, and back to Chicago, and so changing schools, losing friends, making new friends, and parents getting divorced, and in the meantime, and then going between mom and dad, and so. A lot of people go through that, besides the constant moving. I mean, kind of military people, maybe kids experience.
Yeah, they move
that.
a lot as well.
Yeah. But still same culture, same language, So that's, it was, you were kind of always the outsider, and kids don't like to be that,
No.
So you want to be included, and when you're always the new kid, and and then the foreigner on top of it, and then even from a state to state, so it.
Was there a lot of bullying because of this?
There was some bullying. Yeah, I remember some in Chicago. I remember some bullying in Chicago. But that's where, you kind of have to toughen up, and it's, again, it comes to the parents, how they handle it, and and don't baby you. If they baby you, it makes it worse. My mom did not baby me. She
No? Tough.
My mom was tough. I mean,
Tough life.
she would beat me. She'd be in prison now. The new law they changed.
Oh,
they
yeah?
changed here in Czech
It was that
Republic.
bad?
Yeah, anything that she got first that was by her hand. It didn't matter with
You
a
got it.
spatula or a stick or a belt or whatever was there. Grabbed it, beat me, and not that I didn't deserve it, but
Yeah, but still, there's a difference between just.
but she didn't beat me, to a pulp or something.
No, okay, but
Yeah.
still, like a
But, yeah.
belt that can, that
Oh,
can be
yeah.
very painful.
Or slaps across the face. I mean, my mom slapped me across the face. I was 19, had a child already. So that's
Man. So Okay, so this moment, you're not a Christian yet.
No. No.
You're going through all these emotions without Christ.
Yes.
How do you deal with this?
I don't know. It's just, just had to deal with it. It's some things were tough, and then when my mom kidnapped me, then I didn't see my dad, and my first memory of being in Czechoslovakia was we land in Prague, and here comes these guys, and they take my mom and they take my stepdad away, and then one guy takes me, and I'm 9 years old, and he takes me to the bar there and asks me what I want, so Coca-Cola, right? And for hours, hours, he was talking to me. I just remember he was asking me all kinds of stuff about America and my parents, and
so this was actually secret police just interrogating you.
It was actually the STB, the state secret police, and at the time I didn't know it, but then everything fell into place. So.
Okay, so just to get people quickly onto the same into the same area where you're now talking about, right? So you were born and raised in the Czech Republic, but then you escaped communism or socialism or however you want to call it, went to the US, then your mom kidnapped you and you returned to the Czech Republic, and then you fled again.
Yeah.
So 9 years you're being interrogated by the STB, and this was the
1973. This was on top of it during the normalization period. So after they tried to, in the late 60s, they tried to do socialism with a human face, right? What a farce.
Wow.
So then the Russians, they squashed it, and other armies of the Warsaw Pact overnight invaded, in August of 1968. So that's when we escaped, and then we came back in 1973. There was an amnesty for immigrants, so that's when my mom kidnapped me and took me back to Czechoslovakia. So
and you were 9 years old when this happened.
9 years old, yeah.
Now you can say a whole lot about young kids, about them being adaptive and overcoming traumas.
This was difficult.
That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, there must have been.
It's different when you're 4, and then when you're 9, when you're thrown into, like a third world country, pretty much. It wasn't, but compared to America.
But I can even remember when I first came to the Czech Republic, and this is like how many years ago? Maybe when I was 6, maybe 16 years ago. Is that possible? 15, 16 years ago. Comparing it to the West, it was not good. So going back even further, like where you are, where you're talking about, that there must have been.
It was really bad.
Rough times.
And then I barely spoke Czech. Then I already started 4th grade in America, so they stick me in 4th grade, and now all the kids are making fun of me. I can't speak proper. Then I can't speak the proper to the teachers. I would speak informal to them.
Okay, yeah.
And so I had to, in not a whole full school year, and I had to do 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and
catching up,
and then so they stuck me in 4th grade. They saw it's not working, so then I was going after school to 1st grade just with the teacher. Then they stuck me into 2nd grade, and they stuck me into 3rd grade.
Wow!
And then they said, well, if you want to be with your year, then you would have to, in the summer, 2 months, you would have to do 4th grade.
So you had to do summer school as well?
And I said, no, I don't want to. So that's how I stayed a year behind. So I'm like, I'm not doing school.
Yeah, that's... So you drew for yourself, you drew a line in the sand, basically. Yeah. You said, okay, this is okay, but now...
I'm not doing school. And
what did you make why did you decide until here and not further?
Because I was already constantly studying, catching up, and even basic writing, going to 1st grade, you got the hot check, and I had none of that, right?
By the way, if you're listening, you're thinking like, how hard can a language be? Give it a shot.
Czech language is difficult.
That's crazy.
And especially for English, which I was an English speaking, okay, so I did speak at home Czech, but I didn't know how to read or write.
Uh-huh.
And my vocabulary was very limited, inside. Even with my cousin, she was Czech, we spoke English, everything was English, so just with our parents, you don't speak on some, higher level.
And then catching up is very difficult.
Well, not just that. In fourth grade, they started learning Russian, right? On top of it.
Of course, they had to.
And so
man.
I didn't even know the Czech alphabet. Now learning Cyrillic, Russian alphabet, and so I just so they gave me a choice. They said, if you want to, you can stay behind, or in the summer, and I just didn't.
You didn't care. You said, no, this is it.
Just wanted to enjoy the summer, and that's and Russian, I wasn't really looking forward to.
Yeah, but who doesn't want to? If you're 9 years old, who doesn't want to enjoy the summer?
Yeah.
You're not gonna be in. Nobody's gonna. No kid is gonna choose. Okay, maybe the very smart ones, but then that's okay. So basically, you could choose. So you made a choice, and you said, "I'm gonna enjoy being a kid." Basically.
Well, there was enough of other things to adjust. I mean, the whole culture was, different, and the TV and the food, and all the food for the kids. The cereal and all the Twinkies and Ho-Hos and all. The
everything
chocolate,
was different.
Bubble gum. I mean, everything. And nothing here, right? TV, we had cartoons and all that. And you had one little cartoon, Večerníček, okay?
And you still have it until this day?
Yes. So, it was like 10 minutes, right? In the evening. But not just that. It was, so my mom and my stepdad, my parents, don't talk about America, in school or anywhere else,
You could not be talking about the U.S.,
Yes, my parents told me not to talk about it
because of the whole
communism and and the whole propaganda here, how America's bad, and and they even teachers told my mom, don't have him talk about it. I would, of course, right? I'm a kid, right?
Yeah.
Don't have him talk about America, because we're trying to tell him something, and then Martin's saying something different, right?
Oh man,
contradicting things, right? And so and on top of it, we lived at a dead end road, and in 1973 there was the Volga, the big Russian car sitting there with two guys sitting there reading newspapers at a dead end road, right? They were just
literally
they were watching us. When my parents wanted to talk privately, they had to leave the house and go into the woods. We knew that our house is bugged, right? So,
yeah.
So, as a kid, you had to, deal with these kind of things. And then every kid was in the youth organization Pioneers, right? The little communist youth organization, right? And so they wouldn't take me, and
you weren't communist enough.
I wasn't. Well, I was, politically, unreliable. And the thing is that, all the kids, they were doing certain things, sports and and functions with this, youth communist organization. I was excluded. So again, I was the outsider in so many ways. So I mean, as an adult looking at it, because then through other things I went through, it doesn't seem that bad. But as a kid at the time, it was no fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, well, I can't imagine because I didn't went through it, but I can. What I do know is that basically you sound like a third culture kid to me.
Like a what?
Like a third culture kid. So you have your own culture. That's basically the first one is Czech Republic. Then you have like this swamp of cultures, like you said, Austria, German, that you have to go through, and then you end up in the States. You make the States your own culture, but basically that's your second culture. And now you return back to the Czech Republic.
And it's foreign to me.
Yeah, but also in the States, you were also a foreigner. So what is home? What can you call home? And then there's the Russians pushing down on the country. So You end up with this.
Eventually, in America, I became an American. Then because coming so young and then going to school, so I spoke English perfect. I had no accent, nothing. So and being white, all that. So I looked like an American.
Yeah, you fit right
so
in
then
there.
kids couldn't tell, but then coming here and actually being born here, I was so different, from the kids here. And on top of it, being in a village, village, everything is more amplified than in a city.
Especially the social life, yeah.
And so, I was such an oddball, and so I got into a few fights too as a kid here. But I gotta say, I was pretty blessed. The kids mostly were good, so I made friends, and that made it easier than to get into to the collective. But that's where I learned that I had, even at 9 years old, I realized I had two choices. Either I'm going to try to fit in and be one of them, which I realize is pretty much impossible. And it's like this, swimming against the current, or I'm going to embrace my difference and make it a virtue and not something where kids get bullied because they're different and then they don't embrace it, and they're kind of ashamed of it, or they try to fit in, and I saw it on some other kids that were they were being bullied and they couldn't fit in and they were the nerds, or whatever. And so I decided that I'm gonna embrace it, turn it into a virtue, and if somebody would attack me, I would attack back, and I'm better than you are. I'm different. I'm better differently. You're just
You're the ordinary, but
yes, I'm the.
I got the special skills of understanding multiple cultures and languages,
and when they would make fun of me, didn't speak proper Czech, I started speaking English to them.
So you basically made fun of them,
yes,
by not understanding you. Okay.
Yeah. So and that helped me a lot in the future.
So is this just the adaptiveness of a child that comes up with a coping mechanism?
Yeah, that was kind of, I guess, my coping mechanism to, and from then on it was okay. Then I even made friends. I actually got into the collective and even into the the in the States they call them jocks, but it wasn't jocks. It was just the better kids, the popular, the cool kids.
You made it. You're in the cool circle.
I was
right
in
now.
the cool kids, So it took a little bit,
Struggling, yeah.
You kind of have to any time in life you kind of have to build a position. I had to then do it in the army, same way. In the beginning, it's tough. You take some wounds and licks and hardships, but if you persevere,
you have to find your place, right?
Yeah,
you have to find your place, and then once you found your place, you can settle down and make yourself comfortable. But until then, it's a bumpy road.
You pretty much have to figure out who you are, what you want to be, and who you are, and not let the circumstances or the surroundings determine it for you.
Yeah,
and then you have to stick to it regardless of what's happening. So first you really got to embrace yourself. Get to know yourself, know your limitations, know your strengths, and just and don't try to be something you're not. It's not.
I think that's very important advice. Yeah, don't try to be something you're not. But then there's a huge shift because you become Christian.
Oh, that was much later.
Yeah. So what time frame are we talking about? This all happens like 9, 10, 11. You found your place.
I found my place, who I am, what I stand for, and that's where my search for God started, which I didn't know it's a search for God. because coming from America and everything they were saying here was a lie, you know.
You don't know what to trust.
It's easily determined when you just come from there. You live there for 5 years, and then they're telling you this is how it is there.
Yeah, you're not. No, that's
it's
not.
not.
Yeah.
Right? So I didn't believe anything that they were telling me in school or in the TV.
Mm.
So I tried to verify everything. So I loved science and math and chemistry and all these things, and so the physics and the whole thing with the Big Bang Theory and coming from apes, they were like, okay, this is not scientific. Okay, you can't even put the basic scientific method on it. I realized it takes so much faith to believe it. Okay. Oh no, you can verify. You have to wait millions. It takes millions and millions of years, and you just have to believe it, right? And to a kid, on top of it, like something so absurd that we came from apes. Okay, so how come some apes turned into people and some apes didn't? And
you're asking the questions.
Yeah. To myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then I disregarded that notion that we came to. So I even when people were trying to push it, I'm like, well, maybe your family came from apes, not mine.
You're plainly
not
just
my ancestors.
Yeah,
you know,
you're like, no, that's not my not my background story.
No. But so I just started looking for answers. You know, so I did a lot of studying. Of course, a lot of forbidden books. You know, even Deniken just like died. Henrik von Deniken just died like a week ago. He was like 90, but the Swiss author, The Chariots of Gods, and he was explaining everything, all the mysteries. He was explaining with aliens. Like who built the pyramids, or someone explained things. Aliens created humans. So for a while, I was into that too. I was just going from one to philosophy, aliens. I studied all the religions, and
you're just looking for what is true.
Yeah, just looking, and a lot of things on the surface looked good, and that's where most people stop. They get something satisfy them, and they don't dig deeper. But I just wanted to know. And that's where I started pushing everything away, because deeper you started digging into anything, then you started seeing the holes and the contradictions, and it started falling apart because it didn't stand on the truth, right? So that's how my journey started. It was a long journey, and eventually I realized that, and then I'm a engineer in material science and technology, and blueprints and all that, machines and stuff, and so thinking of things and putting it on paper and constructing it, and so then I realized, okay, like just this cup. I mean, if I see the cup and I don't know the designer, I don't know the maker, just because of the product, I know they exist. I'm simplifying it, but so if there's a creation, then there has to be a creator, right?
Yeah.
Or I can believe that if I wait millions of years, that this will come together somehow on its own.
Yeah.
Okay, so who's more crazy, right?
Yeah.
And what takes more faith? So that's how I became, to believe in God, and and the rest of the story, we had the other.
Listen to the testimony. Yeah.
How I then became to follow God.
So you start to follow God, and you're now a Christian, but of course this brings a shift in how you deal with things. So again, hardships arise. A lot of things happen in your life. How do you cope with those hardships?
Well, first let me get back to how I coped with them before I knew Christ. So because I was different, and so I had to embrace it and take the virtue, and I had to toughen up. So I was pretty tough to take adversity. And as I said, my mom, didn't take any prisoners. So
she's helping you to become tough.
Toughen up, and even the Czech culture was pretty tough. It wasn't Not like, in America, oh, you can be anything you want, you can be the president, and, and you can sing and you can't sing, and then the person goes in front of Simon Cowell and and then their whole world falls apart, right? So no, we were raised, even the kids here, like, tough, and the world's not going to give you anything for free, and you have to work for it, and and tough it up, and and don't be a loser. And so I was pretty tough, and I because of the experiences, being kidnapped, America, back and forth. So, I kind of, that's life, kind of, don't cry on anybody's shoulder. That was the other thing. Man is a man. Even in communist culture, be a man. And so that's I dealt with things on my own, and even my friends, they knew me, and and they said, we're not worried about Martin. Whatever comes his way,
you will manage.
He can deal with it. He's even, how I managed the army, and then I was supposed to go to prison, and my friend, he was already there, and he was waiting already every bus that came that I'm going to step outside.
Yeah. He was expecting you to enter the prison.
He was expecting me, and he said prison was tough, but he said, man, I know you would have found a way again, somehow, how to manage. But then when I was relying totally on myself. Okay, I had good friends where some things I knew I could rely on my friends for help, but I learned to really just rely on myself, nobody else. And then suddenly, when I became a Christian, started reading the Bible, now suddenly it's all different, right? Suddenly it's not me and my power and my knowledge and my experience, right? Because you learn you're pretty much nothing in that sense. You pretty much have no power. Your reach or whatever, the things you can influence are so limited, right? You learn of all this, in spiritual realm, and and fallen angels and demons, and all the things that. So suddenly you realize there are things beyond my control and beyond what I can affect, right? So that was kind of difficult to adjust, and suddenly not relying on myself.
But why was it difficult? Or what made it difficult?
Trust was one of them.
So before your faith in Christ, you only trusted yourself?
Yes.
Self-made man, toughened up.
Trust only myself. Yeah. I didn't even trust my mom to tell her when I was escaping the second time that she would not report me, right? So there were only a handful of people that knew that I had the trust that I'm escaping.
Yeah.
So till this day, I'm very, very careful, very distrusting because of my background, my experience. That my wife, she's the only one that I tell everything. Nobody else, and God, of course.
Yeah.
But and sometimes she goes, where my distrust. It's doesn't have, even it appears that way. There's all these, proofs of it. It still does not have to be that way. It's still in me from the youth. Verify. Would
you say skeptic? That you're skeptic, or?
I am a skeptic.
Yeah.
But also, I'm a huge skeptic. But I'm also I have a lot of hope. But the hope came with Christ. Before that,
non-existent.
There was not much hope. Then when I came to America, back again. Then there was hope, because you have opportunity, so you can build something, and all that. But even that, I saw where the world is going, because of my experience, and because of all the studying that I did, history and all of that.
Yeah, all the books.
So I could see the writing on the wall, already in the early 90s, where America's heading towards leftism, socialism, communism, and all that. people were laughing at me, like, "Oh, Martin, you're living in the past. That could never happen to America." Yeah,
Well, see where we are right now.
yeah,
right?
exactly,
Yeah.
right. So, but that was no, it's a huge adjustment that I'm not even sure if I made it 100%. I do trust God 100%. But certain things that, I go with everything to God. But then even it's still the trust issues then came out somewhere else. Okay, like before I trusted myself, trusted my know-how, my opinion, my abilities. Now it's when things are like not going something, then I don't trust that if I'm hearing properly from God. So I said it kind of flipped, where I was totally relying on myself and had strong belief in myself. Even other people had strong belief in myself, and now with God, the more God is going up and up in my world, and the more down and down I'm going.
Yeah, the more you trust him, the less you trust yourself.
Yes,
basically.
yes.
And even the ability to understand him, to check what he says is correct, is like, I don't trust myself.
Yes, it's so that's difficult sometimes.
That is difficult. Yeah.
And on top of it, God can be frustrating sometimes, right? So that's my big beef with him. Well, yeah, you got all the time in the world, right? I don't.
Yeah.
Patience.
Yeah.
Patience I was never too patient with God. I had to learn a lot of patience that I didn't have. But still, it's like, okay, Lord. So like right now, where God tells me to buy a building, 3 years we have a building.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening with it. It's costing us money. Okay, Lord. Yeah, I trust you, but okay, this is bleeding us, and I was not going to buy it. You told me to buy it. Now you're not even talking, which he does that.
But do you then trust yourself now in that you understood him correctly, that you had to buy the building?
Doubts come in.
Doubts come in.
Of course, doubts come in. So did I hear properly?
Quickly for those who are listening, because now we're talking about a building. You own a building in the US.
Yes.
You bought the building because you believe God told you to buy this building.
Yes.
But since the moment you had the building,
nothing but problems.
Issues.
Nothing but.
Now you're trying to sell it? Is that
no? I'm kind of waiting.
Waiting on the Lord to say, I want you to do this or that with it.
Yes, and he's not talking. And
yeah, that's an issue.
That's an issue. But again, God does that. Sometimes he withdraws. Sometimes he doesn't talk. And for whatever reason, sometimes it's just a test of faith, and it's like, sometimes we get an answer and then things don't go exactly how we assume they should go, and then we keep going back to him, and it's like, I already told you, okay, stop questioning,
Would you say it's normative for God to test us through hardships?
Yes, 100%.
Only hardships, or is there other ways of testing as well?
I don't know. I never thought about it. I see it through the hardships.
That's when it comes to light most, right?
I think test comes. Yes, tests do come also. I don't put that much importance on those tests when things are good. But now you ask and I think about it. So, quick example came to me. Voting on a new millage, on a new tax in the little town in America where we live. And they were going to tax businesses and homeowners, and it was for the school that every graduate of high school then can get, for 5 years, they would get subsidy for college. Okay.
So they would tax the homeowners, and the tax would
and the
pay
businesses, and it would pay for kids, even if the homeowners or the business didn't have kids, or kids were already gone. So, But we had 2 kids in school that were ready to graduate. So it would affect 2 of our kids that they would get this money. And we prayed about it with Katrina, not even too much. It was like, this is not fair, this is not right for other people to pay, especially me coming out of socialism, right? Communism, take from one and give to another. Yeah. And even that we would have benefited from it, I said no, and we voted against it. So I guess trials even, and tests come even not through hardships, even when you're doing okay.
Yeah.
So, but I think you learn from them, but maybe the impact, if you do the right thing, then the impact's not there. I mean, maybe if we would have failed, if we would have done the wrong thing and voted for it, then maybe there would have been a lesson to come from it. But when you do the right thing, then. But I think regardless of where the hardships, the tests come through, it's God knows. Okay, He's not doing it for Himself. All the tests are for us.
Yeah.
To know if we pass them, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, if I'm in this situation, I would handle it this way. Oh yeah, no problem.
Until you're really there, and
until
then see
you're
how you
there,
respond.
And a lot of people actually fail in what they think they would do when it's actually pressed upon them. And so that's when the test, when you pass, that's when it builds you up, and or if you don't pass, then you can learn from it, and you can adjust and ask for more strength or forgiveness, of course, and or help with it or whatever. So all the tests are for our benefits,
But then, so what's the biggest difference then, since you have been tested without Christ, and you have been tested and are being tested with Christ?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the biggest difference between those and how you handle them?
The biggest difference, I guess, is without Christ, there's less accountability. So without Christ is, if you do something wrong, which of course I did, you had to even in communism, to survive or whatever, you had to do, lie, cheat, steal, did it all. Everybody was doing it, right?
Yeah. Just to survive.
Yeah. And I wasn't as bad as the most people. Really. And that also kind of gave me a little bit of pride, that I had some limits, Everybody's got some limits, but somebody's limits are way there, or some don't have limits at all. They'll go over dead people, as as you say. So even that I did all these bad things, my limits were, pretty good compared to,
not as bad as the others. Okay, yeah,
right. So, and that was probably, being in the States, then reading some of the forbidden books, about certain things, how, people, should act, and, how things should work, and, not Marxism, Leninism, you can go kill the bourgeoisie and steal everything from them, and they're the bad guys. So, so that was there. If you didn't get caught, there was no accountability. Okay, if you stole something,
it was that simple.
Yeah,
not getting caught, no accountability, nothing happened. You're okay.
You're okay, exactly. With God, that all changes.
There is the accountability, whether you get caught or not. He sees it. He knows it.
Everything. First, when I believed in God, I hated that. I really hated like that. He. Not only that he sees me constantly, everything I'm doing, he reads my mind, right? It's like there's no privacy. And I was so huge on privacy that, I'm still, when it comes to the world, I am still very big on privacy. I hide things, I don't share things. Even when I started going to church in America, going to church, people in the church didn't know where I live because I didn't tell them, right? So it again goes back to the, distrust.
Yeah, of course.
So and I learned, in communism, everything's going to be used against you. Everything. Your weakness, information, whatever, everything is eventually going to be used against you to harm you. So I was not happy at all with God. And there was no hiding from him, right? So I had to embrace it eventually. I mean, the closer I got to the Lord, the more I learned about him. Actually, now I'm glad. I'm glad that I have this big brother, Jesus, the good dad looking over me.
Uh-huh.
And if I start even thinking something wrong or doing something wrong, that he will correct me, check me, that I have that security, and so I don't worry that much about doing something wrong, Of course I'll do something wrong or whatever, but it went from here to all the way different.
So you went literally from the one opposite to the other.
To the other with God.
Yeah.
I still stayed Martin in my essence. I am still who I am.
Uh-huh.
It's just I look at things differently.
Yeah.
I do things differently. And it actually, God broadened my horizon and understanding and knowledge and everything, which was always my little pet peeve. I always wanted to know how everything works. I mean, it sometimes drives my wife crazy, right? That I need to know, or I need to know why, or and this and my wife's like, well, I'll find out in heaven, right? And I'm like, no, I want to.
I want to know it now.
I want to know.
Yeah, tell me now.
I want to understand, right? But on one hand, God helps with the hardships, but on the other hand, certain things are more difficult with God. The one thing is that a lot of people don't understand is it says in the Bible, when you accept Christ, you're gonna have life, and you're gonna have life more abundantly.
Uh-huh.
Most people think life more abundantly, all the good stuff.
Blessings, money, houses, works, everything.
Easy peasy.
Uh-huh.
That's not living life more abundantly. More abundantly means more of everything that life brings.
Yeah, the good and the bad.
The bad, the hardships, the trials, the tribulations, the frustrations, the injustice, everything, and you really do open. I mean, the saying, be careful what you wish for, right? Sometimes, and with God, all much more opens up, and then suddenly it's not just living for yourself or for your family or friends. Now, you're living for him, and suddenly now you're living for other people, that God wants you to do, so that kind of goes against the whole of our selfish nature, right? And then when you're going through a trial, and then you're supposed to help somebody else, and you have enough of your own problems, and so, and especially when something bad happens to you, and like when my brother died, then that really comes head to head, where.
How old were you when this happened?
It's happened in 2009. So my brother was 28 and I was 44.
There's a big difference between you and your brother.
16 years.
16 years. You was his big brother.
And he was my best friend too.
Yeah?
Yeah. And he died saving 3 people in a house fire, and he wasn't saved.
You want to share what happened?
Yeah. So I got my brother to America, and he was working with my brother-in-law, with my wife's brother, who was 10 years older than him, and they were working together. They were friends. They were fixing houses, painting, doing all this kind of stuff, and go play pool and, drink together, and
Just really good friends.
good friends and coworkers, and my brother-in-law had a wife and two little girls, and he lived in this house. And my brother had his own apartment, but sometimes when they worked late, and they had a workshop next to the house on top of it, so sometimes they would still work after work there or whatever, or so sometimes he would sleep there. My brother-in-law went to bed, and my brother was still in the workshop doing something, and then he suddenly saw the house on fire, and so he ran in there, and he woke him up, and he took the 2-year-old girl in his arms and ran out, and the wife with the 4-year-old girl, they ran out, and my brother, put the little girl down and didn't see my brother-in-law come out, so he ran back in there, and they both died there.
They both passed away.
Yeah, burned alive. So, and on top of it, we were planning to go to Israel for a while, and suddenly we were supposed to go to Israel, and then something happened that we had to move it, change the plans, and we went to Israel. My brother took us to the airport. We went for 2 weeks. We're in the middle of our trip in Israel, and we get this news.
So you were not even there when it happened. You couldn't do anything. You just.
So I was so mad at God. So you knew this is going to happen. You told us to go to Israel. You even changed the plan, so we go this time. So we're not here when it happens. Then my brother dies. He's not even saved. And so I was really, really angry with him. I was so angry with him, and it was a hard time. I didn't lose my faith. It was just, why, Lord? You could have prevented this. Why did you let this happen? Okay. And even when I was in Israel, when it happened, I asked God why, and the only thing God told me was, I'm going to use this for big things. That's all he told me. Nothing else. No explanation, nothing. And, of course, me wanting to know, so I ask even my pastor, and my pastor really hears from God. When he starts praying, Holy Spirit tells him.
Yeah.
God telling you something? Nothing. No, nothing. So, not even telling my pastor nothing.
So you were praying yourself. You asked your pastor, who always hears. Nothing. It's radio silence.
Radio silence. Why? Why it happened, but mainly, he was not saved. And
how difficult was this for you that he was not saved?
Oh, it was terrible. Okay. I know without Christ he can't go to heaven. The only other option is hell. So just picturing that my brother's in hell, it wasn't about my brother dying. It was about him being in hell.
That was the real hardship.
That was the issue with God. And I remember I was walking on the beach, and I just, how could you do this? And, and I don't care about if through my brother's death, if 1 million people get saved. I don't care. I don't care about those people. I care about my brother. So that you sacrifice my brother for whatever. Oh, I got him talking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got him.
But before we go in there, it sounds to me like that's a very normal reaction, you know, just in almost despair, just not hearing from the one who created your brother and the one who allowed it to, you know, to end. The
It is, but I had and have a healthy fear of God, and you're supposed to have it. The Bible talks about it. So I don't come to God lightly, you know, or a lot of people, you know, I am very careful because, I mean, God is God. He's the supreme, ultimate.
Yeah.
I mean, who are we to question anything, right?
Yeah, you said Jesus is my big brother, but he is God.
Yeah, and it's, you know, so, I mean, go and pick a fight with God. You know, we sometimes we make fun of it when with my wife, when sometimes one of us gets frustrated with God, you know, and so the other one steps aside. You know,
In case
the lightning comes,
the fire
right?
comes down. Yeah.
Like,
The
whoa,
fire's-
whoa, whoa. So, you know, and
Yeah.
we make fun of it, but no, I mean, you know,
So you was mad, you was angry, sad, all these emotions are going through you, but despite this, the fear of the Lord is still keeping you in charge.
it's still that I didn't curse at him, or, you know, that was the only thing I did. I pretty much accused him of doing something bad,
Yeah.
sacrificing my brother, and that's where I got him to talk pretty forcefully, let me put it that way. He said, "That's not how I operate." And then
How did you hear this?
I heard it inside me. I
So you did, until this moment, you did not hear anything like this before.
No, I heard from God before.
Yeah, I mean, in this situation, it
Not
was
in
like
this
you said,
situation. The
was
only thing he
silence.
told me, I'm going to use it for great things. Nothing. This was already, my brother was buried, so this was, you know,
Couple days, weeks
no, a
later,
couple weeks, 3 weeks, a month, I don't know.
and then
I
he
mean,
says, "This is not how I operate."
This is not how I even tried to raise him from the dead.
You tried to you prayed for your brother.
Mm-hmm. I prayed before we buried him to, you know, and nothing. Then suddenly God spoke to me in my head. He said, "That's not how I operate." And through the scripture in my head about the good shepherd, how a good shepherd will have 100 sheep, one will go, you know, will wander off, and the shepherd will leave the 99 unattended, and he will go save that one.
Yeah.
So that's what he threw. So, you know, I was pretty much accusing him that he sacrifices that one for the 99, and that's why he said, "That's not how I prayed," and showed me the scripture, brought it to my remembrance. So, okay, fine. So that's
Were you relieved when you at least had this?
a little bit, but I still haven't. It's still it. So okay, so he didn't sacrifice my brother for the, you know, benefit of others or whatever, but still didn't answer the fundamental one. You know, even if he would have sacrificed my brother and he went to heaven, fine. You know, but that was the underlying issue, and so it was harder to deal with this with God than when I was an atheist. When I was an atheist, okay, my brother's dead, you know, nothing I could do about it, you know, it was really, you know, just, and you have to move on. Here, it wasn't, you just have to move on. Here, I had to deal with, you know, my brother's eternal life, how God, what he did or didn't do, or why he did it, and how, you know, I mean.
Yeah, you have many unanswered questions and
life questions,
yeah,
eternal life questions, right? And And of course, Satan then tries to come in and, God's not a loving God and a good God who allows this to happen. And then you're dealing with all these attacks on top of it, right? So you have to fight that all off. But I just kept praying. I just kept praying, and asking God. And then you hear a testimony over there and over there and over there. And three testimonies from three people that didn't know each other. They had a vision that when my brother and my brother-in-law were dying, that there were actually two angels there and covering them with their wings and protecting them. And slowly things started falling into, because the firemen got there at 11:36. They couldn't even get into the house anymore. How they tried and they couldn't. How it was just, blazing. I mean, a wooden house, right? And the coroner came very soon. Coroner said that they both died at 12:05. And I'm like, that's impossible. And that was a part-time fireman in a nuclear plant. And I even found out where the fire started before even the police fire investigator. He had it wrong. But I'm like, there's no way they could have been alive, And but then with these testimonies, the angels covering, and that Jesus appeared there and with them, and all of this, and then I don't know why, and the timing or whatever, I still don't know why God, chose then when He chose to show me. I remember it. I was sitting on my porch. Oh, so every time I called my pastor, the 3 times, not that he had nothing, he told me the only thing I'm getting from God was, let your heart not be troubled. That even made me more angry.
Yeah, because you're looking for these answers. And basically he says,
how am I
chill.
Yeah, but how am my heart not supposed to be troubled?
Yeah.
My brother, right? And so that would make me even more angry. I said, how am I not supposed to be troubled? And then the one time I was on the porch, and I talked to the pastor. He told me this, and I'm like, okay, Lord, how is my heart not supposed to be troubled? And God, that's when God told me. He said, "There's more to it. Look it up."
There's more to it. Look it up.
So Bible.
Yeah, you go into the Bible.
Yeah, let not your heart be troubled. I go prepare a place for you, and where I am, you'll be as well. And if it would not be so, I would not tell you. Something in that sense. And I think I'm pretty much quoting it. So with that, I was like, okay, so my brother's in heaven, but how? How could he be in heaven when he did not? He believed, but he didn't accept Christ. And he later. I still want to do some things, didn't want to commit. He realized then he would have to change some stuff, so later, so how, and then I was more, open. I wasn't as angry. I was just, and so.
So at this moment, you had the confidence that he was
in heaven.
I
just didn't know how he got there.
Uh-huh.
And I know the only way is through Christ. There is no other way. And
you already had the 3 testimony
that they were protecting them while they were alive, the angels.
Yeah.
So how is this possible? So, and there are things between heaven and earth, and then also time. God can stop time, and do all kinds of stuff. But God showed me a scripture where there is no greater love than when someone lays down his life for a friend.
Yes.
And that's what Jesus did for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what my brother did for my sister-in-law and the 2 girls They were 2 and 4 years old, and he tried to save my brother-in-law. So he laid down his life for his friends. And that still won't get you to heaven. But what God showed me is that God gave him a chance. That's why the angels were there. And my brother-in-law was saved. And that's why the angels were there, to give him time. And that's why Jesus showed up. And God even gave me like a vision where Jesus showed up and Adam said, "Who are you, Lord?" And Jesus said, "I'm the Jesus that your brother's been talking to you about for years."
And Adam is
my brother.
Yeah.
So that he accepted him, and then that's why they died at the same time. God took him. Jesus took him to heaven both at the same time, and that was that.
That's madness.
So then I called my pastor, and I told him, and he said, "I know I was not allowed to tell you."
You're joking.
No.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm. God said the only thing I should tell you is let not your heart be troubled. That was something he wanted to work out with me, and something he wanted to tell me himself and not through the pastor, that Adam's in heaven.
So God deliberately took his time with you and took you through the process, took you through the hardship.
I don't know why.
Struggle.
Yeah, but I still don't know why. Why he didn't tell me right away. Why, I mean, it was, in my adult life, I cried only once. When I was like 20, 22, when my best friend died here. That was before I escaped. My best friend died. And still, my other friend had to take me to a bar and get me drunk. Then I cried. Otherwise, I didn't cry. When Adam died, for a month, I cried every day.
That's
Cried
how much you
every
missed
day.
him.
And the whole thing with, thinking that, he can't be in heaven,
Yeah.
and, and all that. And so, I don't know why, maybe I wasn't open to it. I don't know, don't know. I don't even, even as much as normally I want to know why and things, I'm satisfied, and why God took me through it. But it was literally heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then dealing with my parents, and my stepdad, his only child, and so my mom, is just me left, and I got him in America, and if he would have stayed here, maybe it wouldn't happen,
Are those thoughts that you struggled with? That you're blaming yourself?
No, I never blamed myself for it because as we talked earlier, I realized there's so little I can control. Well, this was nothing I could control. And God, on top of it, removed me from the situation. Probably on purpose, because we lived like 2 miles away. I would have ran into that house,
And perhaps died with them.
Yeah. So it...
The thing that I find interesting, though, is that through this situation, I hear a similar thing happening. You get the news that he's passed away. You're in Israel. You can't do anything, but you cry out to the Lord. Why? Of course, you have a lot of questions, but you seek Him. Then you come into the stage. You hear all these stories, the testimonies, but also the coroner's information, the fireman's information, all these things, and you cry out to the Lord again. Now you end up in the beach. After a couple of weeks, you're still crying out to the Lord. You're pounding the door of heaven, saying, "Hey, please give me some answers." And it reminds me of the story in the scriptures of the nagging wife, the nagging widow. There's this story that something unfair happened to her. I can't remember exactly what it says, but she is nagging at the judge.
She's nagging at the judge.
Yeah, and he's going crazy.
He finally gives in,
Yeah,
even that he didn't want to. He's
exactly.
finally, yeah.
He gives in, and Jesus says, "You ought to be like her. Ask, ask, ask," and that's what you did. So if I listen to this and I would take away one big thing, it's in the hardships, just storm heaven with prayer. Keep asking.
For sure.
Yeah.
And don't, a lot of people, okay, this was a big thing, but a lot of people don't even bring little things, okay, to God. Like, I'm not going to bother God with it, and
But you can.
You're supposed to bring
Yeah.
all the burdens, not just the big ones or just some. Just bring all the burdens to me, And so, that's what I learned. But again, you have to totally switch from relying on yourself. Now you're totally relying on God. I mean, that doesn't mean that you don't do anything. You bring it to Him, but sometimes you still have to take care of the problem. Just God directs you. You can't just, okay, here's the problem, God, and you take care of it, and I'm out, and I'm gonna go my merry way.
But I do think a lot of people think this way, that they can, I'm a Christian now, so He will sort things out for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then still He's like, no, I want you to do things.
Mm-hmm. He'll just direct you, guide you. Or sometimes we want to take care of a problem, and He'll tell you, don't take care of the problem.
Yeah.
And again, for some people, that's even more difficult to let it go. Okay, so I have a problem. I'll go to you, God. Either take care of it or show me, how to do it. And the worst is, no, just let it go.
What?
Yeah,
I don't want to let it go.
But
you have to. You have to.
And that's where you just...
And then we come back to the issue of trust, right? Then you have to trust Him, that He knows best, and that He will do what is needed in your life.
Even when it doesn't look like it's working out. Even and sometimes it takes a long time before you then see the connection or whatever that actually was a good thing. But sometimes even you have to take some hardship that it helps somebody else. And there is no resolution for you. It's God's using you, just like He was using the apostles to go and preach the good news, and they were getting stone thrown in prison and all that. It's not like they had something out of it, So, then we can't forget that once you accept Christ, the other side's going to attack you.
Oh, for sure, yeah,
and keep attacking you, and that's why you have to be a warrior.
Yeah, you can't see it, but your shirt says warrior with a cross.
Yeah, you got to be you get into a battle, into a war between good and evil, and the worst thing, if things actually do go smoothly in your life, then there's a problem. You're not being attacked by the enemy, then you're not a threat to the enemy.
So what's up?
Yeah, something is something is amiss, and you can be a Christian, but it says that only the ones that last till the end will be saved.
Yeah, we have to finish the race. Yeah.
You have to finish the race. You can't, and so. But one hand, with God you get more trouble, you get more hardships. But that's where the trust comes in. You have to trust Him, where He says, He will never forsake you. He will let you go through it. Sometimes, there is a good thing. Like a picture in America is that's a good description of it is footsteps in the sand by the beach, and you have two sets.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you only have one, and then again you have two. And
God, where were you?
Yeah, and it's like, God, here I don't see you. Here is where I had the most hardships. Where were you? And God says, well, that's where I was carrying you. Yeah. And it's true. I mean, God does withdraw sometimes for whatever reason, but He will not leave you when you're really. He can't go against His promises, what He promised, and that's where we have to trust Him, even when when we don't see the evidence of it, when the proof of it or whatever, and that's through hardships. You either build up trust, faith, or you lose it. And if you lose it, you really didn't have it much strong in the first place.
So in this sense, hardships are always the test of your faith.
Yes, and it's like there was one preacher that gave a word of knowledge to my daughter. My daughter went through a lot as well, and that's where this preacher didn't know her, saw her for the first time, and just got a word for you, and it's you're being pressed into a diamond, and how does diamond become out of coal or whatever? Only under tremendous pressure, suddenly this beautiful thing comes out. And the pressure, and it's the trials and tribulation that then, it's just like gold. You have to run gold through fire to, get the impurities out, to get pure gold. Yeah. And that's the pressure and the fire and all this. That is the trials and tribulations and the hardships that then, make you stronger. And with that, you can, then help other people. But it also, which, to be honest, worries me sometimes is, it's like getting prepared for, what is to come.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So you can handle it.
Yeah.
And if you're not strong enough, if you don't have strong enough faith and trust, for a lot of people, they lose it, and they lose their salvation. They don't last till the end, I mean, I know I don't want to get into the whole debate, once saved, always saved, or you can lose your salvation. Mm-hmm. But it's evident that, it's like the seeds, one on the road, one, this, one that. But the one thing is the one who will last till the end will be saved, and...
Yeah, where does it end?
Will
it get worse or will it get better?
Yeah, it ends when we're with the Lord. That's where it ends. It's a whole, go through this, your whole life.
I'm reminded by the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 guys in the book of Daniel. And this king Nebuchadnezzar, he builds this statue, and they have to bow down for it. And they say, no, we don't bow down to no statue. So we only bow down before our God. And they are thrown into literally a furnace. Like a humongous fire. That the people who throw them in the fire, they burn. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they end up in the fire, and then the king says, "Hey, who's the fourth man in the fire?" Right? Yeah. Of course, that's Jesus. Before he was human. So a pre-incarnate Jesus is right there with them in the fire, and he's protecting them. So listening to your story about your brother, being surrounded by angels, is nothing that didn't already happen before, at least once.
And that was actually, Katrina for some reason my wife doesn't remember this, but she prayed about it. She prayed because they died in the fire. She prayed about it, and God, where were you? And that he told her he was in the fire.
Right there, yeah.
That he was right there with them, and so.
But it comes back to this a moment in which you have to make a choice. What do you do? Do you choose him or do you choose against him?
Yes.
And I think in every moment of hardship, we have this option. Do we choose for him or against him? And being a Christian, it sounds the obvious thing to do, but I know of many people who also chose the opposite and said, no, I'm not doing this. And they left.
They walk away.
They walk away, exactly.
They say, how can, when there's a lot of stories, and then come across some, kids being hurt or something really evil, and how, they go, how could a good God allow this to happen? And they leave the faith. I mean, it happens. The one thing I did know, and that is where it comes to trust, is that even me, as still being untrusting when it comes to the world, even people, because I know people have limitations, right? And so, but when it comes to God, even when, and maybe that was the test. Maybe that's why God didn't tell me for, a month or whatever, maybe 2 months even. It was long. Maybe that was a test that I was not gonna abandon him.
Yeah, you choose the right thing. Yeah.
Even if my brother would have, end up in hell or whatever, it's the trust that he's a good God.
Yeah, did you have loyalty towards him?
And the trust in that he even that I question it, how could you do this? That doesn't look, good. That it's realizing your own limitation, how little we understand or don't understand, right? Our knowledge is, minuscule, right? And trying to understand God is like, don't even try, right? We can learn something about him through his word, but it's beyond our comprehension. So it really comes to the trust that what he says is true, and he's a good God and, just God and all this. And even when we don't understand that, and then on top of it is faith, at least to me, and I realized is it's got to be very selfish.
What do you mean with that?
That at the end, the only one you can affect going to heaven is yourself. Nobody else.
The only one you really can affect
to go to heaven
is yourself.
Is yourself. You're the only one you can make the choice of. I can't make the choice about you. I can't make the choice about anybody. So eventually it's a selfish, and it's to some degree you have to look at it is, okay, I'm not gonna, like Paul. Paul said if it's possible, he would give up his salvation for the salvation of his people, right? But it's not possible. So, and he knew that. And so, you have to make sure that you end up there. And it is a selfish thing, that you're looking after yourself to end up in heaven, and don't try to be like some people think they're noble, because, okay, God did this, or God's not just, and I don't want to be with him, and I'm like this false pride, or this pretty much...
It's a false narrative that will lead you to nothing.
And a false that I'm pretty much better than God, right? So, it's... so that's where at the end of the day, no matter what happens, is you got to make sure you yourself end up in heaven, and that's where you can't get distracted. You can't, believe the lies from Satan or of your own, and, you think that you're more moral or, better than God.
Stay humble and keep running the race. That's what you mean. Yeah. And, even through the hardships, even through the beautiful things as well. When life goes easy, I would say that through hardships, I have to be careful what I say now before. That this is one of those statements that's be careful what you wish for. But through hardships, it often seems easier to stay connected with God.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Instead of the blessed times.
Well, of course, but when you're going through rough times, if you're a believer and you trust God, then you go to him. Yeah. Right?
And you have this intimacy with him, the connection. Yeah. You read the scriptures.
If you're doing good, it's like, you kind of get don't need him, you
become lazy.
Yeah. I pray every day and about everything. But of course, when it's a hardship, it's more intense. It's more intense, and it's more often, and it's longer, and no, you won't get everything. I mean, my dog. How much. I loved my dog, and my wife loved the dog, and he got sick, and God could have healed him, like that, and surgery and, the vet and spend a lot of money on it and, and carrying him around and, taking care of him. And
this was not a small dog.
no. And I even had a broken ankle.
Yeah.
And no, God wouldn't heal him. Don't know why. And not only that, I'm still not happy with God about that.
one of those other struggles, ongoing struggles.
He told me to put him down.
Yeah.
So now that he wouldn't heal him, he told me to. He was otherwise healthy. He was just crippled.
Yeah.
But he was healthy. 8 years old, and he told me to put him down. So then I have to call the vet, and I have to put him down. I spent all my time with him. He was constantly with me. And he was a friend, and so. But does it change my mind about God? No, I'm not happy with him about it. Don't know why.
You still, of course, and you see the same. You see a similar pattern come into existence, right? You have questions, and of course, we prefer to have answers to these questions, especially when you're somebody who likes to know how exactly everything is put together. Mm-hmm. You want to have these answers, so you start asking questions again, and again. Zilch, silence.
No, nothing with it. And Katrina prayed. I prayed. This over a long period of time. We've been dealing with him, being crippled, for months, and surgery and all this. And no, nothing. The only thing the only thing he told me about the dog, we even prayed, should we do the surgery? No, nothing. Then the only thing he tells me about the dog is it's time to put him down.
Yeah. Not the thing you want to hear.
Thank you very much. Okay, yeah. That's was very not comforting, right? But
not comforting. It's so sad, man. Oh,
this is the one thing that a lot of people, they thank God for healing their headache, right? Okay, I don't. Okay, because.
You have no headaches.
And when I have a headache, I pop a pill. So the pill takes, which is very seldom, but that's why I don't use no pills, nothing. So I pop one pill and
it's done.
It takes the headache away. But people, and these kind of people on the other, they are afraid to struggle with God. This is what I learned from the Jews. We were talking, I travel between, Europe and America. I travel a lot to Israel as well. And this is what I learned. And through Jews, and then in the Old Testament, it's okay to struggle with God.
Yeah.
It's what God wants is a real relationship. And so it's okay to, like, if I'm not happy with him, that I tell him, I'm not happy with you. But I know already I'm wrong. Okay, I know I'm wrong, but okay, you created me this way. I'm human. All right, I'm not, I don't like this, but it's a matter of heart how you approach God. And that's where, I can say, I'm mad at you, God, and it's okay, or I can say it in a way where it's not okay. All right. So, even my wife makes me mad sometimes. Okay. Yeah. And she's like a saint almost. And, and so, it's okay. It's, if you have a good relationship, sometimes it's just, me talking, I guess he's got other people to talk to, not just me. Right. But it's okay. But you got to be careful. You got to be careful. It's just like with your parents. You can have a disagreement. It just depends how you handle it, how you approach it, and so. But
like you said, right, with a healthy dose of fear of the Lord.
Yes, just like Jacob
yeah.
struggled with God, literally
Exactly.
fought with him, you know.
I just looked it up. Genesis 32, right? I went to the scripture. It literally says, I will not let you go unless you bless me, is what he says.
Yep.
Jacob says it to God.
Yep.
And then God says, hey, what is your name? He said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed.
Yep.
See, again, so this is I think it's a very nice one to close with, because it's through the struggle in which he has the fear of the Lord. He asks for the blessing. And what does God give him? The blessing.
The blessing.
Now he walks the rest of his life with a limp, but but he's turned from Jacob into Israel. Yep. And it's without going too much detail, this is such an important moment in biblical history, that he receives his blessing. In the hardship, through the struggle, he received the blessing. Mm-hmm. And if I would have to summarize your story, I would say a similar thing. Through your hardships, you have held on to the Lord. Since the moment you found him, you held on to him. You struggled with him, but you also received the blessing. Can we say that, or is that?
Yes.
Are you now wondering? Yeah, I'm wondering what the blessing is.
No. It's there are a lot of blessings in my life. A lot of blessings. I mean, again, it doesn't mean that everything is hunky dory or everything. I mean, like right now we don't have a place to live in America. We sold our house and now we're dealing with. So no, but overall, definitely blessed. That's without a doubt. I would not. I mean, I live both lifestyle, atheist and this, and I would not change for anything. If the only regret I have is that I didn't become a Christian sooner, because I could have avoided some of the mistakes that I made that, then go through your life with you, or there's consequences or whatever, know. So no, it's but I can say that it's like a double-edged sword. On one hand, walking with God is easier because you have that backup and that help and all that. But on the other hand, it's actually more difficult than being an atheist. It is more difficult.
Because you have to be, there's the accountability.
There's the accountability, and then the knowledge. As an atheist, you have so little knowledge. It's like, as they say, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
You're ignorant.
This is literally written in scriptures as well, right? That to know stuff, it can be a very big burden.
Yes.
And I think this is with knowing what sin is and knowing what sin can do in one's life comes the burden. But also, like you tying it back to your brother, your biggest struggle with him being in hell, this is something that you knew because you knew the scriptures. And God had to change your knowledge about this fact to the new reality. Therefore, you have you go through the hardship. You go through the like you said, almost 2-month struggle.
There was one thing. As I said, you're being attacked by Satan on top of it, and it came to a point where I literally I was out loud screaming, like, Satan, I don't care what you do to me. You're trying, I'm not gonna abandon God. No matter what he does to me, I am not gonna abandon him. I'm not gonna disallow him. And that also goes to scripture, but that's, it's a fight. It's your whole walk with the Lord on this earth. It is a fight against evil.
Yeah.
So, and it's God, Jesus never promised us that we're going to have it easy. On top, quite the contrary. That Jesus, that's what a lot of people don't understand. Jesus said, I didn't come bring peace. Quite the opposite. He's going to set, parents against children, and all this because of him, because of the truth, and so for all the listeners, it's worth it. At the end, it's definitely worth it. But it's not easy road, but God will be there for you. And even when you don't understand everything, it's faith. That's why it's called faith and trust, but it's definitely worth it.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. If you got questions, drop them in the comment section below. We're going to close it here. I think there's a lot of information in this one. I don't know. Yeah, leave a comment, let us know what you think. Follow Martin. He has his own YouTube channel, which is linked. As you can see, it's a collaboration. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Share the podcast with somebody you know. And then don't forget to like and subscribe and do all that stuff. And we'll see you next week with a new testimony of a girl who, again, it's another special story, but a woman who had an encounter with the Lord and who went through some serious stuff in life as well. So make sure to be tuned in. See you next week, Tuesday, with a new Testimony Tuesday. And after that, a new podcast episode. Until then, have a great day. May days. That's crazy. Again.
Even my divorce. That was
No, please stop. More. You see?
I walked away with nothing.
Was there a similar pattern, you calling out to the Lord?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's the only thing you can do.
Nobody does everything right, but I pretty much, did and
but
she left me for money for another guy for money, but yeah, again, a lot of my talking with God was walking on the beach, and I'm walking on the beach, and I was praying, I didn't want a divorce, and save my marriage, and God no, and then He said, and she's gonna have it really good, and you're gonna struggle. You're not gonna have nothing. That's what He told me. And it's gonna take a while, but eventually you'll have everything you want, and she won't. It took years, but then there was a stepson that I loved as my own son. I still do, and he was like 9 years old, and I haven't seen him I didn't see him for like 7 years. Had no contact with him. But yeah, that was also walking on the beach, and no, she's gonna, and then yacht and everything, and new house, and and I'm like pinching pennies, right? And because I lost everything in the divorce, everything that I worked for, she didn't work, just occasionally, and yeah, it was a struggle there too for a while.
What to do with this? It's keep going.
Yeah, and then
keep going.
And then she